LaMelo Ball in his first game back from an ankle injury put up amazing numbers only to lose to one of the worst teams in the league. This is an all too familiar situation for the Charlotte Hornets this year. LaMelo Ball has been out of the lineup since late November. The Hornets have gone 3-17 since then. In Ball's absence, they've showcased how devoid the roster is in terms of cohesion without their focal point playmaker. Ball went down with yet another ankle injury, a troubling development for a young star with immense potential. His ankle health is increasingly becoming a topic of distress. In his blossoming NBA career, Ball has played only 2 substantial seasons of basketball, both in his first 2 years. Since his 2021-22 campaign, where he played 75 out of 82 games and transformed into the all-star guard we all thought he was capable of becoming, things have been rough. He missed the majority of the 2022-23 season, appearing in 36 out of 82 games. He was sidelined after a phantom injury that I don't think I've ever seen in my life. He suffered a non-contact ankle fracture. When you see a player fall without contact, you fear it's a more severe injury, such as an Achilles tear. But in Ball's case, it wasn't, which makes it more worrying given his track record. And things repeat as his current injury occurred without an awkward planting or twisting of the same right ankle, a concerning realization. I mean, if your ankle could mess up that badly in such a manner, Anthony Davis would be in a wheelchair right now. It's alarming to see a young guy go through such severities. Give Ball some credit. He was the flimsy duct tape that was supporting this roster, which was well overdue for an implosion. The team looks like it needs a drastic change. This Hornets core has been clinging on to their 2021-22 campaign for 2 years now, winning 43 games that season, but finishing as the 10th seed because the Eastern Conference was exceptionally deep that year. Finishing 4 games above 500 isn't earth-shattering, but it's an improvement considering the franchise we're referring to. But the team would end up firing head coach James Borrego, citing his failure to elevate the team as the reason being. Borrego had improved the team's win total by 10 wins in each of his last 3 years in Charlotte, but this was the right move. He wasn't going to be the one to take them to the next level. And funny enough, his replacement wasn't any better either. The Hornets brought back Steve Clifford, who'd been their head coach for 5 years before Borrego. In that time, Clifford had taken Charlotte to the playoffs twice. His high point was when Charlotte finished as the 6th seed and lost to the Miami Heat in a 7-game first-round matchup that was actually pretty entertaining. But this isn't 2016, and since returning to Charlotte, Clifford has been terrible. Now, you can make the excuse that their best player hasn't been available for 2 seasons, which definitely hurts their chances of winning. But if LaMelo Ball is the only thing keeping you from a top 3 lottery pick, then your team wasn't going anywhere to begin with. Not to mention, LaMelo was balling out this season. There was a 9-game stretch where he put together 32, 9, and 7 on 50 and 44 from 3. He was cooking, and despite his best efforts, they did little to alter the results as the Hornets went 3-6 in those games. So Ball's production did not have impact on the outcomes of Hornets games, and it's pretty obvious why. This is an improperly coached team with a poorly constructed roster, a team with too many offensive talents who can't work in conjunction. People have a tendency to get blindsided by individual offensive output. Offense is a team activity, just like everything else in the NBA. To compare, just because a team has a bunch of good defenders doesn't mean they have a great defense. Take the Memphis Grizzlies for example. They had the last 2 Defensive Player of the Years starting for them, and the best thing that's going to transpire for them after this season is if they get a good lottery pick. Offense is the same thing. Just because you have a bunch of great individual scorers doesn't mean they'll work together. Scheme and fit are an integral part of success in the NBA, which is why they're preached so heavily. Excluding Ball, this year the Charlotte Hornets have 2 players averaging 20 points per game. Not to mention Gordon Hayward, who's a previous All-Star, and 3rd overall pick Brandon Miller, who was drafted so high because of his dynamic scoring. With all these scores, they're still bottom of the Eastern Conference. Meanwhile, the Oklahoma City Thunder are the number 2 seed in the West, and they have 1 player averaging more than 20. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Other serious offensive weapons are Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, and both those guys are averaging less than 19. No one besides the starters and shooting specialists Isaiah Joe score on that team, and they're one of the best teams in the league. The Hornets in Ball's absence have been pitiful. Despite holding tremendous talents on the roster, they failed to turn out anything productive with their assets, a team of empty calorie stat sheet stuffers. LaMelo Ball has been their saving grace, and I'd bet he's contemplating his future with this organization, an organization that has done nil to improve the team in anything. But Ball's in a tough situation because being injured means he doesn't really know what his team is capable of because he can't be out there with them. He needs to take some advice from an NBA legend and learn everything he can from him. This legend is someone who overcame ankle issues that at one point almost derailed his career. A lot of y'all can probably tell that I'm referring to Stephen Curry, as his struggles with ankle problems early in his career are infamous. There was a point where it appeared Stephen Curry would never be able to play basketball because his body wouldn't allow him to. Okay, that might be a little bit of an oversell. In truth, Curry's injuries were never as severe as Ball's, considering he only missed the majority of one season, but it was a routine sighting to see Curry with an ankle injury about every 10 games, especially in the season where he did miss a ton of games. In 2012, Curry was coming in and out the lineup because he kept re-aggravating his ankle. Coach Mark Jackson was playing peekaboo with Curry in the lineup, inserting him for one play at the end of a game, which sounds absolutely ludicrous when you think about it, and it was a catastrophe for Stephen Curry for the entire duration of the season. He'd eventually undergo a right ankle surgery, after which is when his health really started to turn around. During his rehab, he completely transformed his training regimen with the guidance of Warriors performance director Kiki Lyles. Curry's workout focused on strengthening his hips and glutes, which was meant to depressurize the force applied to his ankles. And Curry trained like a beast. You look at him now compared to his younger days, the guy looks like he's twofold stronger. LaMelo Ball is a lot younger than Stephen Curry when he was experiencing his ankle woes, which means youth is on Ball's side. I'm not a trainer, so I can't hand LaMelo Ball a workout plan and instruct him, but there is reason to be optimistic considering history is on his side. What is saddening about LaMelo's situation is that it feels like the rug is being pulled out from under him every time he's rolling. Coming off an all-star year, expectations of playoffs and taking the next step were held by the general NBA viewership. And Ball has never troubled anyone when he's on the court. In the small segment of games he's played last season and this current one, he's averaged 24, 8.5, and 6. The guy is an F22, he's just missing a runway. Ball's circumstances are unique, but they're not baffling when you consider who he is. LaMelo Ball has been a pro since he was 16. He'd forego his final years of high school to play overseas basketball against grown-ass men as a skinny brace-faced teenager. Ball played professional basketball in 2 different continents before he made it to the NBA. By the time he grew some hair on his chin, he'd had international basketball experience that could only be rivaled by European prospects. LaMelo Ball spent 2 years across the globe playing pro ball as a teen, and that's something a majority of NBA players will never experience. And when you mix in his time playing in his dad's own league, the JBA, plus his stint in Spire Academy, and the countless AAU tournaments that every young hooper is damn near required to compete in nowadays, that's a lot of basketball. And now you add countless hours of training in between, it's clear this man's body has more mileage than an 06 Jetta. We are all familiar with his older brother Lonzo's tribulations. Like LaMelo, Zoe came in as a top 3 pick with an incredibly high ceiling, and despite finally blooming in Chicago, Lonzo's story is a tragic tale of a man's body surrendering. Despite being 26 years old, Lonzo Ball's knees have kept him off the court for 2 full years, and although there's a glimmer of hope, Lonzo's story is a modern tragedy. In LaMelo's case, things aren't as grim, and more than likely he will bounce back from his injuries better than he was before. Such a journey shapes a player into a friction-resistant product. His game plays as such. The smoothness he showcases as a boy in Chino Hills was what brought him virality, and that smoothness has translated to every level of the game. LaMelo Ball has not altered his play style one bit, instead choosing to embrace his gifts. He's never tucked his tail under the lights. That confidence is why he made it to the NBA, and that confidence can be the catalyst for his future triumph. Thanks for watching.